Imagine a dark, silent night over the Caribbean Sea. The massive USS Gerald R. Ford cuts through the waves when suddenly, the radar alarms begin to scream. A heat signature appears, then another. Then, a missile has just launched from the coast of Venezuela. If this moment ever became real, what would happen in the first 30 seconds? Could a U.S. aircraft carrier actually be destroyed by a Venezuelan missile strike? Or would that attack trigger a much larger, faster, and more catastrophic chain of events than anyone expects? Today, we explore one of the most controversial scenarios of modern naval warfare. What if Venezuela attacked a U.S. aircraft carrier? And the answer is far more shocking than you think. And welcome to Strategicline. Before diving into this scenario, we need the bigger picture. Tensions between the United States and Venezuela have been rising ever since the USS Gerald R. Ford moved into waters near the Caribbean. To Washington, it's a routine deployment. To Caracas, it's a provocation. Mistrust is high, and the margin for miscalculation is razor thin. A U.S. aircraft carrier is not just a ship. It's a mobile war machine carrying the F-35C, the F/A-18 Super Hornet, and the E-2D Hawkeye, all protected by Aegis destroyers and a layered defense network that moves like a single combat organism. When this system approaches a hostile coastline, the risks are enormous. The question is simple. Does Venezuela actually have the capability to attack a U.S. carrier? And if they do, what happens next? Is Venezuela really ready to attack? To understand the reality behind this scenario, we need to strip away the exaggeration and look at Venezuela's actual combat readiness. Yes, Venezuela owns Su-30MK, two fighter jets capable of carrying Kh-31 anti-ship missiles. And they have coastal anti-ship systems, surveillance radar, and Russian-made electronic warfare support. On paper, it looks like a strong defensive package. But none of these systems can hit a U.S. carrier by themselves. Every element must work perfectly and simultaneously. Radar detection, data sharing, fighter launch, missile coordination, and electronic jamming. This is precisely where Venezuela faces its biggest weakness. Still, the threat cannot be dismissed. If those systems fire together, they could create real danger. Next is the scenario of missile attack from the shore. Now imagine the Venezuelan coastline. At maximum alert, operators track the approaching U.S. carrier group. A command is given. Missiles roar into the sky, flying low and fast toward the USS Gerald R. Ford. But the carrier is never alone. It is surrounded by one of the most advanced defensive perimeters on Earth. Aegis destroyers detect the moment the missiles appear. The AN/SPY-1 radar tracks every movement. Interceptor missiles launch in seconds. CIWS and RAM systems prepare for close-range engagement. And above all of them, the E-2D Hawkeye is already watching everything from miles away. The moment Venezuelan missiles leave their launchers, the U.S. sees them long before they reach cruising speed. The real question becomes, can these missiles break through 5 layers of U.S. naval defense? The honest answer, almost impossible. This is why the United States remains confident even when operating near hostile shores. But there is one scenario far more dangerous. A scenario the public rarely hears about. Airstrike scenario. Venezuelan Su-30 strikes. If Venezuela truly wanted to challenge a U.S. carrier, they would rely on their Su-30S as the spearhead. The Su-30 is a powerful aircraft, fast, aggressive, capable of carrying the Mach 3 Kh-31A anti-ship missile, But power isn't the issue. The issue is detection. The E-2D Hawkeye, flying high above the carrier group, can spot incoming aircraft from hundreds of kilometers away. Even if the Su-30s fly low, they can still be tracked. Once they appear on radar, US F-18s and F-35Cs launch immediately. The chase begins long before the Su-30s reach firing range. Their chance of reaching launch distance? Small, very small, but not zero. But what if Venezuela didn't send one jet, or two jets, but everything they had? Here is the scenario that truly concerns U.S. planners. To overwhelm a U.S. aircraft carrier, Venezuela doesn't need better missiles. They need more missiles. A saturation attack. So many incoming threats that the Aegis system becomes overloaded. Multiple missiles from the coast, dozens of aircraft from different angles. Drone attacks to split the radar's attention. Electronic jamming to confuse the sensors. False radar signatures to create phantom targets. In this scenario, the Venezuelan missiles don't need to be perfect. They just need to overwhelm the system. There's only one problem. Venezuela doesn't have enough missiles, jets, or drones to sustain an attack like this. This could only happen as a single, desperate, one-time strike. And it would come with enormous consequences. Because if that one big strike ever happened, the conflict wouldn't stay in the Caribbean. U.S. counter scenario. Domination in minutes. The moment Venezuelan forces launch a real attack, the U.S. will not wait. Within minutes, Venezuelan jets would be intercepted. Coastal launchers would be destroyed. Radar systems would go offline from jamming and missile strikes. The United States would take full control of airspace, sea lanes, and communication channels. From that point on, the situation escalates rapidly. If even a single missile is fired toward a U.S. aircraft carrier, the event is no longer a warning. It becomes an act of war. In the first minutes after the strike, Venezuelan launch sites would be destroyed. Su-30 fighters would be hunted down. Coastal radars would be silenced. Key military infrastructure would be targeted with precision. In the first hour, Venezuelan air bases would be crippled. Additional U.S. warships would surge toward the Caribbean. American air dominance would become total. Within the first day, Venezuelan command structures would collapse under relentless pressure. Communication lines would fail. Military units would become isolated and unable to coordinate. This isn't because Venezuela lacks bravery or capability. It's because a U.S. aircraft carrier is not just a ship. It's a global combat network supported by satellites, intelligence platforms, and worldwide logistics. So what is the final answer to the question, what if Venezuela attacked a U.S. aircraft carrier? A strike could happen, yes, but the chance of actually hitting the carrier is extremely small. The U.S. enjoys multi-layered defenses, rapid reaction capability, and unmatched global awareness. And any attack would trigger an overwhelming American response. Conflict would escalate in minutes, not hours. And the Caribbean could become the most dangerous flashpoint since the Cuban Missile Crisis. But this leads to a far bigger question. What if Venezuela didn't act alone? What if a powerful ally quietly stepped into the shadows? Russia, China, or a completely unexpected player? What happens if great powers enter the Caribbean theater? That is a story for the next video. Thank you for watching Strategic Line. Stay sharp, stay aware, and see you in the next analysis.